You are not charging enough for your 3D printing. You are a 3D printer and you know what I think you know. You are an absolute badass. And I want to share with you what I learned from 90 hours of printing straight. I thought I knew a lot before. In fact, I think I bragged about it at a couple dinners. And maybe if you own a 3D printer, it's naturally assumed that you know what you're talking about. But I didn't. There's part of it that I enjoyed, parts I didn't. I'm having to reprint very difficult parts because of this experiment where I'm trying to find out how quick you can print and still get the quality measured with equipment. How can I print very, very fast and get reliability and tell my customers, clients, or my manager that I'm printing quality prints? So I ran an experiment, and the experiment looked at 18 different possibilities with different infill settings and different layer heights and different infill patterns like rectilinear or cubic in order to make something really strong. And you, after tested with a thermometer and the humidity and everything tested, and you can say, yes, this product will survive 5 years out in the market because I did my best. I was a professional with 3D printing. And that is how you differentiate yourself from someone that's at a fair that's printing toys. The first thing is you got to stay organized, but slow that down, which means at the beginning of this, understand that a mistake can be costly. But the more that you stay organized, like this sheet that I made that I can share with my clients or my stakeholders and say, hey, this is what your print is. This is the actual name it has on it. I want to let you know that it's currently printing and it's going to be done at this certain time. They're going to come back to you because you are a professional and reliable, and everything they want is documented. Everything that I print uses labels. So in a field inside of my sheet with all the different settings, I make a label and make 2 per run. I put one on top of the printer and then I put one on a bag. And when I'm all done, I put all of the objects for the orders together in little Ziploc bags with the names. I measure the humidity and I measure the temperature of my lab, so in case anything goes wrong, I have a history. And in this situation, I was doing what's called a design of experiment, where I laid everything out using software. All the different settings were set up to test how quickly can you print something and it still has the quality. Let me remove this little label from my hand. So it's important that you stay organized and communicate. That is going to bring up the rate that you're going to charge. It wasn't very clear to me that communication was so imperative. Communication with yourself, slowing down and getting things right. If I were to put a print in the wrong bag and my client would get that, they would be confused, but also it would basically communicate that I'm not thorough, I'm not a professional, and that's what you need to do in order to charge more. So another thing you need to do after keeping that spreadsheet is you need to keep an inventory or a document of all the things you have in stock. That means if you have an extruder and you're using a 0.8 extruder, which is a bigger, fatter extruder, you need to have a couple of those in stock. And it's important to keep that organized and say, I have this many polycarbonates in stock, this many PET cheese in stock. And that communication where you could say, let me check my inventory to see when that print job's going to start, because I don't have the material's coming. Before you start anything, your materials need to be in stock and you need to have backup parts like beds. So for instance, a couple of my beds got damaged because you don't want to pull off hot objects off of a bed. So you need to have a couple of the flexible beds in stock. So as far as humidity goes and temperature, which you can all measure now, don't take that lightly. When filament is made, 3D filament, it is cooled by water. So when it goes in that bag, even though that it's dehydrated or it's dried some, you're gonna want to use an oven. And these dehydrators, which I have over here, are used to actually keep your filament at 30%, and it spirals and it rolls, and you can actually print while using that. You set the time, and it has specific times for each type of filament. For instance, 65 degrees Celsius for, let's say, PET G, and you're going to really want to bake that and keep that dry. If someone's saying, hey, I print fine with a very humid garage, most likely they haven't tested it using a device like this, which actually says, yeah, this product is actually strong enough. Okay, you need to be the person, instead of just doing a GBT or searching for something, you need to understand what your particular 3D printing is capable of doing, or whether or not it's going to last in sunlight or in higher temperatures. Another thing you're going to want to do is, when you get something right, you're going to want to batch the pieces. So if you need 3 of one thing, don't print them individually. Too much can go wrong. Make sure that you batch all of your pieces together. Even though that it's usually 3 times as long, less can happen while you're breaking the machine down, which is cleaning the bed and everything else. So usually, maybe this isn't important with PLA, but it's important that if you're running a product, you need to put them in groups to get 3 out of the way or 4 out of the way, usually while you're waking up. Another thing is that you're going to want to use rafts. You want to make sure that your product sticks to the table. It's okay if you use some adhesive glue. It's okay if you use a raft or supports, but the most important thing is test a small product to make sure that it actually works. For instance, polycarbonate is very difficult. What this is right here, very difficult to stick to the bed. You almost need an enclosed chamber. You're going to want to test out a small little cube and make sure it stays before you run an 8-hour print job. I use rafts. The rafts are something that you can just select, but it's part of the print where it actually creates a surrounding and it helps lock it down, but it's not always sufficient enough. So you're going to want to test that. Once you get a working filament, a brand, which I'm really have my favorites down below, but once you get your brand, stick with it. Don't just change because there's a sale or whether or not it's Amazon Prime Day. Stick with the filament that you know, and also consider blends, which means maybe you want to go a little bit stronger and use carbon fiber, but you can now use carbon fiber that has carbon fiber fragments inside of PETG. But whatever you do, don't go down and visit the Titanic in a carbon fiber hull, that's for sure. The most important thing that you're going to want to do to bring up your price for print is you're going to want to communicate with your clients or whoever you're printing for. Now, if you're making little toys for a fair and festival on the side, that's really not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about communicating with some high-end people that maybe need a prototype, or an inventor that you have an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Communicate as much as possible. That's why at the beginning I said that you need to have a shareable communication sheet which has all the settings, and you can password protect that also. You need to expect power failures and you need to roll with it. Now you'd say, okay, of course I know that, right? But here's the deal. They can really set you back if it's really late at night and you really want to get through with something. It's important that you work in downtime. Things can go wrong, the filament can jam, whatever. Even if you have the best printers, things can go wrong. It's part of the job. So whatever you're estimating, if your slice says it takes 2 hours and 30 minutes, go ahead and add 20% to that. It really does help your mind to know when you have a failure that, hey, I planned it. I have a certain amount of time that's allowed for failures. The other thing that I want to share with you is test your product before you start, even though that you're doing the settings. For instance, I needed supports inside of this slot, right? Maybe in PLA Plus I didn't, but with certain materials you do. So if you are doing a new filament material, you need to test out that. You may need supports with different things. That's part of slowing down. Whatever you do, make something that connects someone. Thank you for being here. I'm glad I got to share some of these things. Peace out. Take care.